Shalom, shalom, everybody. It's your boy Shalom up in here for another law, another session of the 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene, the Joyce Effortless book. Today we're going to read Law 30. Law 30. Make your accomplishments seem effortless. Make your accomplishments seem effortless. Calm yourself. Chill out. Where's my water? Can you go get me a bottle of water, please? All right, let's get it. Judgment. Your actions must seem natural and executed with ease. All the toil and practice that go into them, and also all the clever tricks, must be concealed. When you act effortlessly, as if you could do much more. Avoid the temptation of revealing how hard you work. It only raises questions. Teach no one your tricks, or they will be used against you. Observance of the law. The Japanese tea ceremony called chanoyu, hot water for tea, has origins in ancient times, but it reached its peak of refinement in the 16th century on aesthetic and even political matters. For Rikyu, leave him alone with it, DJ. Leave him alone with it. For Rikyu, the secret of success consisted in appearing natural, concealing the efforts behind one's work. One day, Rikyu and his son went to an acquaintance's house for a tea ceremony. On the way in, the son remarked that the lovely antique-looking gate at their host's house gave it an evocatingly lonely appearance. Evocatively. I see you gotta keep drawing. Evoc. EVOC. EVOCATIVELY. Evocative. Evocatively is not in there. Evocatively. On the way in, the son remarked that the lovely antique-looking gate at their host's house gave it an evocatively lonely appearance. I don't think so, replied his father. It looks as though it had been brought from some mountain temple a long way off, and as if the labor required to import it must have cost a lot of money. If the owner of the house had put this much effort into one gate, it would show in his tea ceremony, and it did. Oh man! And indeed, Senno Rikyu had to leave the ceremony early, unable to endure the affection and effort it inadvertently revealed. On another evening, while having tea at a friend's house, Rikyu saw him. The host needed a relish for the dish, and he was serving, and had spontaneously gone outside. It was a way for the host to prove his cleverness. He had accidentally revealed how hard he was trying. Having seen enough, Rikyu politely declined the cake, excused himself, and left. Emperor Hideyoshi once planned to visit Rikyu for a tea ceremony. On the night before he was to come, snow began to fall. Thinking quickly, Rikyu laid round cushions that fit exactly on each of the stepping stones. that led through the garden to his house. Just before dawn, he rose, saw that it had stopped snowing, and carefully removed the cushions. When Hideyoshi arrived, he marveled at the simple beauty of the sight, the perfectly round stepping stones, unencumbered by snow, and noticed how it called no attention. Let me see. Thought the stone lantern mishappen. Mishapen. It's not in here. These gardeners, unfamiliar with the precepts of Shanoyu, thought the stone lantern mishappen, its windows being too small for the present taste. They had a local woodman enlarge the windows. A few days before Lord Sakayu's visit, Yorinobu toured the garden. When he saw the altered windows, he exploded with rage, ready to impale on his sword the fool who had ruined the lantern, upsetting its natural grace and destroying the whole purpose of Lord Sakai's visit. When Yorinobu calmed down, however, he remembered that he had originally bought 2 of the lanterns, and that the second was in his garden on the island of Kishu. At great expense, he hired a whaleboat and the finest rowers he could find, ordering them to bring the lantern to him within 2 days. DJ, calm down, all right? Calm down. A difficult feat at best, but the sailors rowed day and night, and with the luck of a good wind, they arrived just in time. To Yorinobu's delight, this stone lantern was more magnificent than the first, for it had stood untouched for 20 years in the bamboo thicket, acquiring a brilliant antique appearance and a delicate covering of moss. When Lord Sakai arrived later that same day, he was awed by the lantern, which was more magnificent than he had imagined. So graceful and at one with the elements. Fortunately, he had no idea what time and effort it had cost Yorinobu to create this sublime effect. Interpretation. When to Sun Nurikyu, the sudden appearance of something naturally, almost accidentally graceful, was the height of beauty. This beauty came without warning and seemed effortless. Nature created such things by its own laws and processes, but men had to create their efforts through labor and contrivance. Trivance. Contrivance. Hey, calm down. Contrivance. A mechanical appliance, a dishonest device. Nature created such things by its own laws and processes, but men had to create their efforts through labor and a dishonest device or a contrivance. And when they showed the effort of producing the effect was spoiled. The gate came from too far away. The cutting of the lemon looked contrived. You will often have to use tricks and ingenuity to create your your effects. You will often have to use tricks and ingenuity to create your effects. The cushions in the snow, the men rowing all night. But your audience must never suspect the work or the thinking that has gone into them. Nature does not reveal its tricks, and what imitates nature by appearing effortless approximates nature's power. Observance of the law, too. The great escape artist Harry Houdini once advertised his act as the impossible possible. And indeed, those who witnessed his dramatic escapes felt that what he did on stage contradicted common sense ideas of human capacity. One evening in 1904, the audience of 4,000 Londoners filled the theater to watch. Houdini accepted a challenge to escape from a pair of manacles billed as the strongest ever invented. Manacles. I think that's like handcuffs. I think it's like handcuffs. A manacle, manacle, manacle. Manacle, manacle. Steel class, heavy chain, or handcuffs. A manacle. Build handcuffs to escape from a pair of steel clasps or heavy chained or handcuffs. Build as or manacles. Build. Build as the strongest ever invented. DJ, not DJ. DJ. A Birmingham maker had 5 years constructing them. Experts who examined them said they had never seen anything so intricate, and the intricacy was thought to make them impossible to escape. At one point, he emerged from the cabinet and asked that the cuffs be temporarily removed so that he could take off his coat. It was hot inside. The challengers refused, suspecting his request was a trick to find out how the locks worked. Undeterred and without using his hands, Houdini managed to lift the coat over his shoulders, turned it inside out, removed the penknife from his vest pocket with his teeth, and by moving his head, cut the coat off his arms. Freed from the coat, he stepped back into the cabinet, the audience roaring the approval at his grace and dexterity. Finally, having kept the audience waiting long enough, Houdini emerged from the cabinet a second time, now with his hands free, the manacles raised high in triumph. To this day, no one knows how he managed to escape. Although he had taken close to an hour to free himself, he had never looked concerned, had shown no sign of doubt. Indeed, it seemed by the end he had drawn out the escape as a way to heighten the drama, to make the audience worry. For there was no other sign that the performance had been anything but easy. The complaint about the heat was equally part of the act. The spectators of this and other Houdini performances must have felt he was toying with them. These manacles are nothing, he seemed to say. I could have freed myself a lot sooner and from a lot worse. Over the years, Houdini escaped from the chained carcass of an embalmed sea monster, a half octopus, half whale-like beast that had beached near Boston. He had himself sealed inside an enormous envelope from which he emerged without breaking the paper. He passed through brick walls. He wriggled free from straitjackets while dangling high in the air. He leaped from bridges into icy waters, his hands manacled and his legs in chains. He had himself submerged in glass cases full of water, hands padlocked, while the audience watched in amazement as he worked himself free, struggling for close to an hour, apparently without breaking. Each time he seemed to court certain death, yet survived with superhuman aplomb. A plume. What is a plume? A plume or plum. APLOMB. A plum. OMB. APLOMB. Yeah, I'm gonna start doing words. A plum. APL. A plum. A self-assurance, self-possession. Each self-assurance or each a plum. Meanwhile, he said nothing about his methods, gave no clues as to how he accomplished any of his tricks. He left his audiences and critics speculating. His power and reputation enhanced by their struggles with perhaps the most baffling tricks of all was making a 10,000-pound elephant disappear before an audience's eyes. A feat he repeated on stage for over 19 weeks. No one has ever really explained how he did this. For in an auditorium where he performed the trick, there was simply nowhere for an elephant to hide. The effortlessness of Houdini's escapes led some to think he used occult forces, his superior psychic abilities giving him special control over his body. But a German escape artist named Greene claimed to know Houdini's secret. He simply used elaborate gadgets. Greene also claimed to have defeated Houdini in the handcuff challenge in Holland. Houdini did not mind all kinds of speculation floating around about his methods, but he would not tolerate an outright lie. In the 1902, he challenged Greene to a handcuff duel. Greene accepted. Through a spy, he found out the secret word to unlock a pair of French combination lock cuffs that Houdini liked to use. His plan was to choose the cuffs to escape from on stage. This would definitely debunk Houdini. His genius simply lay in his use of mechanical gadgets. On the night of the challenge, just as Greene had planned, Houdini offered him a choice of cuffs, and he selected the ones with the combination lock. He was even able to disappear with them behind the screen to make a quick test and reemerge second later, confident in victory. Acting as if he sensed fraud, Houdini refused to lock Greene in the cuffs. The two men emerged and began to fight, even wrestling with each other on stage. He was getting it in. Hey, be careful. After a few minutes of this, an apparently angry, frustrated Houdini gave up and locked Greene in the cuffs. For the next few minutes, Greene strained to get free. Something was wrong. Minutes earlier, he had opened the cuffs behind the screen. Now the same code no longer worked. He sweated, racking his brains. Hours went by. The audience left. And finally, an exhausted and humiliated Greene gave up and asked to be released. The cuffs that Greene himself had opened behind the screens with the word CLEFS, French for keys, now clicked open only with the word F R-A-U-D. Complini never figured out how Houdini had accomplished this uncanny feat. Interpretation. That ball was a pickpocket. Interpretation. Although we do not know for certain how Houdini accomplished many of his most ingenious escapes, one thing is clear. It was an endless practice, all of which he carefully concealed from the world. Houdini never left anything to chance. Day and night, he studied the workings of locks, researched century-old sleight of hand tricks. I said, hey, be careful. Research centuries-old sleight of hand tricks. Poured over books on mechanics, whatever he could use. Hey. Take that out of here. Or be quiet. You can sit in here and listen, I don't mind, but you got to be quiet. Watch back, DJ, so we can take it out of here. We can take it out of here. Take the wagon out of here. Thank you. Bring that flashlight back. Bring that flashlight back. Deep. Give it there. Thank you, son. Poured over day and night, he studied the workings of locks, researched centuries-old sleight of hand tricks, poured over books of mechanics, whatever he could use. Every moment not spent researching, he spent working his body, keeping himself exceptionally limber, and learning how to control his muscles and his breathing. Early on in Houdini's career, an old Japanese performer whom he toured with taught him the ancient trick: how to swallow an ivory ball, then to bring it back up. He practiced this endlessly with a small peeled potato tied to a string. Up and down, he would manipulate the potato with his throat muscles. Sound like a snake. Until they were strong enough to move it without a string. The organizers of the London Handcuff Challenge had searched Houdini's body thoroughly beforehand, but no one could check the inside of his throat, where he could have concealed small tools to help him escape. Even so, Complini was fundamentally wrong. It was not Houdini's tools, but his practice, work, and research that made his escapes possible. Complini, in fact, was completely outwitted by Houdini, who set the whole thing up. He left his opponent, literally dragged out the time it would take to escape as a way to heighten the drama and making the audience squirm. His escapes from death, always graceful and easy, made him look like a Superman. As a person of power, you must research and practice endlessly before appearing in public, on stage, or anywhere else. Never expose the sweat and labor behind your poise. Actually just makes them look weaker, as if anyone who practiced and worked at it could do what they have done, or as if they weren't really up to the job. Keep your effort and your tricks to yourself, and you seem to have the grace and the ease of God. One never sees the source of God's power revealed. One only sees its effects. A line of poetry will take us hours maybe. Yet, if it does not seem a moment's thought, our stitching and unstitching has been naught. Adam's curse, William Butler Yeats, 1865 to 1939. Keys to power. Humanity's first notions of power came from primitive encounters with nature. The flash of lightning in the sky, the sudden flood, the speed and ferocity of a wild animal. These forces required no thinking, no planning, They awed us by their sudden appearance, their gracefulness, and their power over life and death. And this remains the kind of power we have always wanted to imitate. Through science and technology, we have recreated the speed and sublime power of nature, but something is missing. Our machines are noisy and jerky. They reveal their efforts. Even the very best creatures of technology, even the very best creations of technology cannot root out the admiration for things that move that we are. We cannot return to such a, but if we could, we can create the appearance of this kind of ease. We elicit in others the kind of primitive awe that nature has always evoked in humankind. One of the first European writers to expound on this principle came from the most unnatural of environments, the Renaissance court. In the Book of the Courtier, published in 1528, Balthazar Castiglione describes the highly elaborate and codified manners of the perfect court citizen. And yet, Castiglione explains the courtier must execute these gestures with what is called sprezzatura. Let's see if that's sprezzatura. The capacity to make the difficult seem easy. Sprezzatura. Sprezzatura. My daughter is in here. Sprezzatura. Oh, that's what I'm missing right there. Sprezzatura. 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 The capacity to make the difficult seem easy. He urges the courtier to practice in all things a certain nonchalance which conceals all artistry and makes whatever one says and does seem uncontrived and effortless. We all admire the achievement of some unusual feat, but if it is accomplished naturally and gracefully, our admiration increases tenfold. Whereas to labor at whatever it's worth to be discounted. Much of the idea of sprezzatura came from the world of art. All the great Renaissance artists carefully kept their works under wraps. Only the finished masterpiece could be shown to the public. Michelangelo forbade even popes to view his work in process. A Renaissance artist was always careful to keep his studios shut to patrons and public alike, not out of fear of imitation, but because to see the makings of the works would mar the magic of their effect and their studied atmosphere of ease and nature and natural beauty. The Renaissance painter Vasari, also the first great art critic, ridiculed the work of Paleo Uccello, who was obsessed with the laws of perspective. The effort Uccello spent in improving the appearance of perspective was too obvious in his work. It made his paintings ugly and labored, overwhelmed with the effort of their effects. We have the same response when we watch performers who put too much effort into their act. Seeing them trying so hard breaks the illusion. It also makes us uncomfortable. Calm, graceful performers, on the other hand, set us at ease, creating an illusion that they are not acting but being natural in themselves, even when everything they are doing involves labor and practice. The idea of sprezzatura is relevant to all forms of power, for power depends vitally on appearances and the illusions you create. Your public actions are like artworks. They must have visual appeal, must create anticipation, even entertain. When you reveal the inner workings of your creation, you become just one more mortal among others. What is understandable is not awe-inspiring. We tell ourselves we can do as well as if we tell ourselves we can do as well if we had the money and time. Avoid the temptation of showing how clever you are. It is far more clever to conceal the mechanisms of your cleverness. Talleyrand's application of this concept to his daily life greatly enhanced the aura of power that surrounded him. He never liked to work too hard, so he made others do the work for him: the spying, the research, the detailed analysis. With all the labors at his disposal, he himself never seemed to strain. When his spies revealed that a certain event was about to take place, he would talk in social conversation as if he had sensed its imminency, its imminence. The result was that people thought he was a clairvoyant. His short, his short, his short, pithy statements and witticism always seemed to summarize the situation perfectly, but they were based on much research and thought. To those in government, including Napoleon himself, Talleyrand gave the impression of immense power, an effect entirely dependent with which he accomplished his feats. Ah, almost there. There was another reason for concealing your shortcuts and tricks. When you let this information out, you give people ideas they can use against you. I like that. There is another reason for concealing your shortcuts and tricks. When you let information out, you give people ideas they can use against you. You lose the advantages of keeping silence. We tend to want the world to know what we have done. We want our vanity gratified by having our hard work and cleverness applauded. I'll agree with that. We tend to want the world to know what we have done. We want our vanity gratified by having our hard work and cleverness applauded. And we may even want sympathy for the hours it has propensity to brag. For it more it's immensely powerful. Finally, because you achieve your accomplishments with grace and ease, people believe that you could always do more if you tried harder. This elicits not only admiration, but a touch of fear. Your powers are untapped. No one could fathom their limits. Image, the racehorse. From up close, we would see the strain, the effort to control the horse, the labored, painful breathing. But from the distance where we sit and watch, it is all gracefulness, flying through the air. Keep others at the distance, and they only see the ease with which you move. authority. For whatever action, nonchalance, for whatever action, nonchalance accompanies, no matter how trivial it is, it not only reveals the skill of the person doing it, but also very often causes it to be considered far greater than it really is. This is because it makes the onlookers believe that a man who performs well with so much faculty must possess even greater skill than he does. Baldassar Castiglione, Castiglione, 29. The secrecy with which you surround spirit, the zeal to conceal your work creates an unpleasant, almost paranoid impression. You are taking the game too seriously. Houdini was careful to make the concealment of his tricks seem a game, all part of the show. Never show your work until it is finished. But if you put too much effort into keeping it under wraps, you will be like the painter Palermo, who spent the last years of his life hiding his frescoes from the public eye, and only succeeded in driving him mad. Always keep a sense of humor about yourself. Always keep a sense of humor about yourself. There are always times when revealing the inner workings of your projects can provide worthwhile. It all depends on your audience's taste and on the times in which you operate. P.T. Barnum recognized times in which you operate. P.T. Barnum recognized that his public wanted to feel involved in his shows, and that understanding his tricks delighted them. Partly perhaps because implicitly debunking people who kept their sources of power hidden from the masses appealed to America's democratic spirit. The public also appreciated the showman's humor and honesty. Barnum took this to the extreme of publicizing his own humbuggery in his popular autobiography. I might have to get that. Barnum took this to the extreme of publicizing his own humbuggery in his popular autobiography. As long as the partial disclosure of tricks and techniques is carefully planned, rather than the result of an uncomfortable need to blab, it is the ultimate in cleverness to do remain concealed from them. Oh man. Well, that was law 30. Law number 30. Make your accomplishments seem effortless. Judgment. Your actions must seem natural and executed with ease. All the toil and practice that go into them. Mm-hmm. And also all the clever tricks must be concealed. When you act effortless, as if you could do much more. Avoid the temptation of revealing how hard you work. It only raises questions. Teach no one your tricks, or they will be used against you. Next time we'll come back and read Law 31. Next time we'll come back and read Law 31. Control the options. Get others to play with the cards you deal. Control the options. Get others to play the cards you win. That's it, man. Shalom, shalom. The 48 Laws of Power, read by Shallow, a Robert Greene book, a book by Robert Greene, a Joyce Effortless book. Till next time, shalom.